majority of our content.
Graceful, sir.
Was there?
I'd already hit record. Hi and welcome to this week's Three Legs Four Wheels F1 podcast. It's Paul here with
Sean,
Kieren,
Lee,
and joining us our special guest, hot from a triple header.
Sean.
Welcome back, Statman. It's been a while.
It has. How long has it been, Paul? Is it episode, what is it,
360, and I can't remember the last time you were on. I think it was...
how have you not prepared the stats?
Yes.
Well,
I'm disappointed. I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. I'm not angry.
you had one job.
I thought we had someone here to do the stats for us. I gave you a stat yesterday.
Did you?
The God Save the King one.
What was it? Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, that was an excellent stat, actually. I retweeted that because I thought it was an excellent one. The idea that Lewis Hamilton's the first driver to have had God Save the Queen and God Save the King played for him. And that's actually an excellent stat. I really like that one.
Yeah.
I've got to admit, I can't take all the credit for that. That did come from a mate of mine, John Lawton. So, Rubber, thank you. He's going to kill me for calling him Rubber on the podcast.
I don't think we want to know why he's called Rubber on the podcast, do we?
Might be something to do with, cleaning a blackboard in a school. It might be
Yeah, he just likes to erase things.
Yes, which I very rapidly erasing my career as you go down that route.
It's all right. We'll do that for you. We'll get Kieren to write another Who's a Turtle Shunt.
Oh no!
Thank you. Is it Piercarlo Ginzani?
I don't know, Kieren. What have you got against him?
Well, I mean, nothing personally, but I'll give me an hour. I'll find something.
All right.
So we have had that was one hell of a British Grand Prix that we had yesterday.
Oh. Yeah, it certainly was. It was an emotional one, wasn't it? And it was, there were so many stats generated from it, but let's be honest. First and foremost, I think the combined emotion of Lewis winning at Silverstone, finally ending that winless drought. Was he ever going to win again? Is he finished? Is he getting too old? That was a question that was starting to be legitimately posed. And for him to come back and finally end that losing streak at Silverstone, in front of a lot of fans who I think there are a lot of fans who I thought weren't necessarily Lewis Hamilton fans when he was in his pomp, but after Abu Dhabi 2021, I think they became firmly Lewis fans. Like they really wanted him to sort of get some payback, and this was, I think, for some fans out there, this was the first step in getting that payback.
Do you think it's a case that people might see this as full payback, or I guess because there's a difference between the British Grand Prix, a record-breaking, glorious moment, and the full realization of that 8th World Championship? Do you think people might still carry on and try and fight for that more? Do you think this will start to placate that sentiment slightly?
No, I don't think it does. I do think that if there were doubts in people's minds, and Lewis has admitted there were doubts in his own mind, this will have put those away. Like, we now live in a world where we know Lewis Hamilton's still capable of winning Grand Prix. Now, admittedly, there were like 5 or 6 drivers that probably felt like they could have won that Grand Prix, but Lewis was the person who actually did. And, he's gotten close on occasions in the last couple of years, but things didn't go his way. Things went his way today, or yesterday, and he didn't make a mess of it. So now we know that, and Mercedes have won back-to-back races. So, we have to consider them to be sort of back in the game. They were lucky in Austria, but luck didn't come into it really at Silverstone. It was a tricky race to judge, and they were the ones that called it right.
Yeah, the way that Lewis managed to manage his tyres during the first stint got the most out of them. The team timed the pit stops to perfection, and then picked the right tyres for the last stint. And again, he got more out of his tyres than in the last stint than I'd say anyone except Max, because Max setting those ridiculous fast laps on hards was that was good, and he was obviously fighting for it in a car that he knew wasn't the quickest. But for Lewis to just basically own the race himself.
Yes. Well, I think McLaren must be asking themselves, why did we not put the medium tyre on Lando Norris? They had a new set available. Lewis Hamilton asked Norris about it in the green room afterwards and seemed incredulous as to why they didn't put them on. Christian Horner said the same thing. Why didn't they put them on? I haven't actually analysed the numbers because it's the end of a triple header and I'm buggered if I'm going to do any work today. I want a day off. But I understand that Oscar Piastri was gained 10 seconds on the medium tyre in the final stint compared to Lando on the soft. So why Lando Norris wasn't put onto mediums is a mystery. It might have cost them the Grand Prix. Certainly would have cost them second place because, of course, Max came flying through at the end. Max was a very docile Max Verstappen. We're used to seeing him being this ferocious, juggernaut at the front. In fact, more than half that race, he was just sort of he was a bit part. He was in the background while it was a private battle between the McLarens and the Mercedes. And then right at the end, he came into it and he looked like he might win it. And to be honest, if it had been a 55 lap race, he probably would have done.
I don't know if this is something which hangs over from the Saturday. I don't know what can be changed in Parc Ferme and such. Because I'm trying to think back. I can't remember if it was the start of this year or the end of last year. Alonso did something to his floor in qualifying and it affected him for the rest of the weekend. Is what Max did to his floor on Saturday enough to disrupt his Sunday?
Well, I don't know. I don't read the technical regs enough to be able to tell you the answer to that. You'd be better off speaking to somebody in engineering. I was under the impression that they were able to repair the damage. It always used to be the case that you could fix that sort of thing, and if there came a time when you couldn't, that's news to me. I don't know, but certainly these cars are very sensitive to damage. We saw in Miami, Verstappen had what seemingly was an innocuous run over the chicane, and then when he lost the lead to Norris, I remember putting a stat on the air that when Norris led them back to the green flag on that final safety car restart, I said this is the same situation he was in Jeddah, and Verstappen passed him within 4 laps. So let's see how long he lasts. And instead, Norris cleared off into the sunset and won the race. So the cars are obviously very, very sensitive to minor damage. I don't know the answer to that. I should know it. But once again, I refer you to the answer I gave some moments ago, which is I'm buggered if I'm doing any work today. It's my first day off in 3 weeks. Go and find out yourself.
I should have brought the stats.
I would make an educated guess that if you damage a front wing, you can replace that front wing if it's the same spec. So I would imagine it's the same sort of rule for a floor.
Yeah.
Yes,
if he had the same spec.
I believe that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't say Red Bull not bringing identical spares just in case something like that happens.
Both cars.
Although of course, back in 2010, I think it was, Sebastian Vettel crashed his Red Bull, I think, in practice, and they took the nose off Webber's car and put it on Vettel's car because they had a new nose. And then that's what led to Webber winning the race and saying, not bad for a number 2 driver.
Painful to watch at first, but beautiful in the end. And that's nothing against Seb. It was just one of those brilliant sporting stories.
Yes, and I should say we used to have our graphics operator on American television, a guy called Ben Nelson, who was a genius at graphics and comedy. When you go on the air, if you've never been in a TV studio, we put a thing on the air called a slate. You might know it from the movies, the clapperboard sort of stuff. We put these days we put an electronic slate on the screen. Say this is episode blah 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 blah. It's Formula One. It's written. Belongs house number, blah, blah, date, production, blah, blah, blah. And he did it. And he normally put some extra graphics on there to make it nice. On that day, the British Grand Prix of 2010, he had the headshots of Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber on either side of the screen, on either side of the slate. And he'd literally swapped the noses on their faces. which I thought was brilliant.
So going back to this week, you said there were some amazing stats that came out of the race, and I know you're not working at the moment, but I'm sure they're all in there somewhere. Fill us in. What did we see?
Yes. I'm not working in so much as I'm not looking this stuff up, but if I can remember it off the top of my head, I'll tell you. Many of them you will have heard. They were certainly extensively in circulation in the UK media. It was the first British 1, 2, 3 on the grid at Silverstone. It's never happened at Silverstone in a Formula 1 race. It was the first at all anywhere since South Africa, 1968, for British drivers. And that, of course, for those of you who are historians of the sport, that was Jim Clark's last race. So it had never happened since Jim Clark was killed. It was the first time that any nationality had done it since 1997. We had 3 Germans, 1, 2, 3 on the grid at Manicourt in 97, Michael Schumacher, Heinz Harald and Ralf Schumacher. And it was the first time that a nation had had the top 3 positions on the grid for their home Grand Prix since the 1980 French Grand Prix. So there was loads and loads of stuff based upon that. And, of course, going into the race, we were all thinking, can it be a British 1, 2, 3? Well, it looked like it would be. And again, it's been 41 years since a nation locked out the podium. French drivers at Imola in 83. And we were having to scramble to get all these things together because I was being asked, okay, when was the last British 1, 2, 3? Well, that was Watkins in 1968. When was the last English 1, 2, 3? Because all the ones in the 60s, of course, were Scottish drivers, Jim Clark, Jackie Stewart. They always had them involved. There were 3 English 1, 2, 3s in 1958, and those are the only ones that have ever happened that involved English drivers. So we were all set for these eventualities, and none of them occurred because we didn't even get an English, we didn't even get a British 1, 2. It was going to be the first British 1, 2 for 25 years, and we didn't even get that because Max Verstappen came along like the baddie and Scooby-Doo. We would have got away with it, but for you pesky kids, that sort of thing. But of course, Lewis, in his own right, I mean, he is a record-breaking machine, and he's carried on that. You may have seen many of these in social media. It's the longest interval between first and latest win, 17 years and a month since he won at Montreal in 2007. So much so, in fact, that Arvid Lindblad, who won the Formula 3 race that morning, hadn't even been born when Hamilton started winning Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli, who is set to replace Hamilton in that seat next year, was less than a year old when Hamilton won his first race. So, and Hamilton was the winner this weekend. 199th podium, 150th podium for a single team. These are all extending records he already had. Been these 50, I think it was 56 races since his last win. He had not won a race since Abu Dhabi 2021 and all that. His previous race victory was Jeddah 2021, which is the race before it. There are so many ways to go. My personal favorite stat is that Lewis Hamilton is now the oldest race winner of the 21st century. 39 years and 6 months or something or other. That's the one I like the most.
Would it be someone like Jack Brabham? Oh wait, what am I saying? No,
21st century. It'll be Kimi.
No, I was thinking of the 20th century, but even then I was stupid, wasn't I?
I think was the question you were about to ask me? Who was the last driver older than Lewis to win a race? I think that's
exactly that. Yeah,
that's where you were going with that, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was Nigel Mansell.
Yeah.
Nigel Mansell was 41 when he won in 1994, and that remains the only victory for a driver over 40 since Jack Brabham, which is where your mind was trying to steer you.
Yeah.
Jack Brabham's last win was in 1970, and in the 54 years since then, we've only had one Grand Prix won by a driver over the age of 40, which is the mountain that Lewis has elected to climb next year with Ferrari, and of course Alonso's been trying to scale that mountain for a year or two now.
Yeah.
Lee, you've been very quiet when somebody's mentioned Alonso. Are you all right in there?
I think he's gone to. He's just popped off to sort an issue.
I thought I had a doorbell.
Yeah.
I thought I had a doorbell and children.
Yeah, he's gone to run to Fernando Alonso, Wayne Rooney to Whitney Houston style.
I don't get that reference. That sounds spectacular anyway, But yeah, of course, Alonso has a big problem right now, and it's called Lance Stroll because he's inconveniently fast. He's out-qualified Alonso 5 times this year, and he beat him in the British Grand Prix by 7 or 8 seconds. I think it was.
I don't want to call shenanigans on that though. There seems to be ones. essentially with Alonso and Stroll, didn't they Piastri and Norris, but in reverse, where they gave Stroll the preferential pit stop at the end to Fernando? And I'm not saying this because he's the son of the owner. Just isn't that what happened? I want to say. I could be wrong.
File it under bugger if I know. I haven't looked.
Stroll would have had track position though, wouldn't he? Stroll would have been ahead of Alonso anyway, so would have got. I
thought Alonso got ahead of him just before the last pit stops, but I could be wrong.
Either way, Stroll's out-qualified Alonso 5 times in the Grand Prix format and twice in the sprint format this year. I get shellacked when I bring this up on social media. No one will give Stroll an ounce of credit because he's, poor little rich guy. Dad owns the team. He has job security that no one else has. Totally valid point. Yes, he does have job security that no other driver with his results would have. But he's there. What do you want us to talk about? He is in the car and he's beating Fernando Alonso in qualifying right now. And that's we have to give the guy credit. If Alonso's as great as we say he is and Stroll is beating him, we have to say, good job, Lance Stroll. He may never be anybody's super duper favorite driver, but you've got to give credit where it's due.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he's putting the car in the wall every week.
No, he's not. I can't remember the last Stroll crash.
I'm not going to lie, there was a bit 19 laps into the race on Sunday when I realised I hadn't gone for my usual pre-race pee, and I was thinking it's a bit wet on the track. Someone could put it in a wall and bring out a safety car.
That wasn't you. You didn't pee on the track.
I didn't pee on the track, no. But I was thinking, who is going to put it in a wall in slippy conditions? And Stroll was the first person I thought of. But then Paul reminded me that Logan Sargent exists, so...
Well, no comment, Your Honour.
I think it's time to do team by team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we do, I just want to say Logan Sargent was 12th on the grid in Britain. That was his best of the year so far, so well done him. There you go. I said something positive about Logan Sargent as well. I'm the eternal optimist. I try and say something. If I'm going to say anything critical about drivers, I like to say something positive about them as well.
Been on Piercarlo Ginzani?
Piercarlo Ginzani.
Oh, I said Gin. Sorry. I'm the arsehole.
Yep, you are being a total shunt.
I could pontificate to you about Piercarlo Ginzani all night, but I fear that would be another episode.
We've got the summer break for that.
Yeah.
Right, that's what we'll do to fill the summer break. We will give everybody the life and times of Piercarlo Ginzani in 4 feature-length episodes.
Yeah, can we make it 3? I'm going to need a week off after that triple header. Right.
I need a week off after 3 episodes of Piercarlo Ginzani's career. 10 years of Formula 1, he scores 2 points.
Kick off with Alpine. Gasly barely...
Well, he didn't kick off, did he?
Yeah, barely made it around the formation lap.
Yeah, poor Gasly.
Yeah, new engine and then the gearbox. Let's go. And
then I'm referring to ye olde Ted Kravitz here, but I want to say that he said in the notepad. That's not what it's called. The notebook yesterday. That basically he did no running when you add all the sessions together, because he did nothing in Q1. I want to say he beached it in Q2. I can't remember. And then he did nothing in qualifying because he knew he'd be starting back at Chapel. And then he didn't race. So he didn't do much at all throughout the weekend.
Looking...
I can step in here. He did 24 laps in FP2. I actually had to cover that because Jack Doohan was in the car in FP1.
That was it. Sorry.
He then spun out in FP3 because it was damp. So he lost the running in FP3. And then he obviously he knew he was going to be at the back in qualifying, so he didn't really make a wholehearted effort at qualifying. So yes, he didn't get a lot of track time this weekend. It was actually him and Ocon were 18th and 20th on the grid. That's the worst that the Enstone team, Alpine, Renault, Benetton, whatever you want to call them, the worst that Enstone have done at Silverstone since the first time they ever entered the British Grand Prix in 1981, when Derek Warwick and Brian Henton failed to qualify. That's how bad of a weekend they had.
Ooh. And it didn't get better. Didn't get much better in the race. Ocon ended up 16th.
Is he in the race?
He is the first nominee on the participation award chart tonight.
Right. I think he would nominate himself. It was such a waste of a weekend. He should have just gone and mowed the lawn or something like that. It would have been more productive.
At least it's not a far drive home. You can probably bust it to Winstone.
Yeah, not for Alpine. I don't know about Ocon. Probably a little bit further in his case. But,
sure.
I have to say, again, credit where it's due, Alpine were a joke at the start of the season. I mean, they were literally being held up to us as the Keystone Cops, the way they were going about firing. Everybody knew what they were doing, and they were absolutely dead last in qualifying in Bahrain. They were hopeless. And then to see them progress, they were 7th and 8th on the grid in Spain, which is the ultimate chassis racetrack. And they've gotten regular points. All right, it's not big points, but they are getting in the points. They are at least on an upward trajectory, which I think would lead them to the possibility that Carlos Sainz might sign for them next year, which I think Sainz a few weeks ago would have laughed. Now it's actually a viable proposition that they are actually making progress, and perhaps this is worth jumping in on, especially as they're willing to discuss the nuclear option of ditching their own engine to be more competitive. Otmar Saf now have told me that engine in its frozen form, because it's, all the engines are homologated, they're frozen in a 30 horsepower disadvantage every time they go on the racetrack. So I understand them willing to think, would it be better if we just ditch the engine project and not run the risk of having yet another competitive engine in 2026 that we're then stuck with for years?
It shows how good their last couple of weekends were. Well, maybe not so much last weekend, but the weekend before, in the fact that they have actually progressed into a solid points position. Solid-ish, but, back end of the points.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Otmar told me, when if you remember Monaco last year when Ocon was third on the grid, he nearly had pole position, and then he finished third in the race. And I said, I was interviewing him about it on the stage in Monaco, because I was saying, talk about last year. I said, was it a surprise to you? Because it was certainly a surprise to us. And Otmar said, it wasn't a surprise to us, because we knew the chassis was good, the engine that was letting us down. So that makes you think to yourself, well, if it was an Alpine Mercedes, where would that car be? It's an interesting proposition. They would be much, much more competitive rather than this sort of wishy-washy averageness that they've sort of been for the last few years. So Alpine willing to make some tough decisions now, and that might attract the likes of Carlos Sainz, where a few weeks ago he wouldn't have even looked in their direction.
And, of course, they brought Flavio back into F1 as well.
I was just going to ask that. What's the sort of temperature in the paddock about that?
Don't ask me. But I am pleased that even the discretions in the Formula One past can be forgiven, as it turns out, and people can be welcomed back to the paddock with open arms.
And the award for diplomacy goes to.
So Nelson Piquet Jr. is in Perez's seat after the summer break then, yeah?
Confirmed.
Of course there's another jump cut. It wouldn't be 3 legs, 4 wheels without one, would it? Just wanted to update on how things are progressing with me taking the Magic Mind mental performance shots. Now, I'm not saying that this is related, but I actually managed to come up with a stat this week that VirtualStatman hadn't already got. So I'm calling that a win. I've been taking Magic Mind every day for the last few weeks, and do you know what? I actually do feel really good about it. I'm more alert, I'm more focused during the day. I'm still not giving up on coffee because I don't need to. It's not a coffee replacement, which I keep saying. I live off coffee. It is second only to oxygen in my life. There's all the scientific studies behind it. It tastes great. I mean, who doesn't like matcha? And what it will do is just enhance your normal mental state. Puts you at your best performance. Obviously doing the podcast and every other hobby I've got. Oh, and a job as well. It's the kind I sort of live the kind of life where I need to be on top of things, especially working in IT, where you've got to be thinking constantly. And Magic Mind, I really do think, is helping me with it. Now, if you want to try it, give them a go. We've got an offer that you can use, gets you up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase. Just use the code 4Wheels20, and it's FOUR Wheels 20. And you can get it from them at the checkout. You can also go to magicmind.com/4wheels, FOUR Wheels. Like I say, give it a go. I honestly don't think you'll regret it. And if you do try it, let us know how you get on. Right, on with the stats. Right, who we're going to have next? Probably our regular participators as well. Anonymous Sauber.
I couldn't tell you what they did all race.
Had a green car.
I know one thing which happened for Bottas. Oh. He went down to 21st in the 20-man championship.
Yes,
seriously, wow.
He is now last in the championship. A man who formerly led the world championship is now last in the world championship. It's a very unusual occurrence. And Bottas was out in Q1. First time this year that Guan Yu Zhou was out-qualified him in Grand Prix qualifying. Ooh. And I tried to liven the mood by saying that the last time that Bottas was out in Q1 at Silverstone, he finished second in the race, and that was in 2014. Sadly, my little bit of statistical pixie dust, far from elevating into a podium position, it elevated him to 15th place in the race. So, fat lot of use that was.
Still an elevation.
It was still an elevation. And if the Sauber team weren't already in a disgruntled enough mood, they then watched their team lose on penalties to England while they were in England. So it must have been a really crap weekend all round for everybody at Sauber.
Are we any closer to knowing who will drive the Audi next season alongside Hülkenberg?
No, I mean Carlos Sainz has been the block in the market, and I understand why. I mean, when you're Sainz and you've won races the last 3 years in a row, and no one in the top four teams is really considering you. I can understand it why he doesn't want to sort of jump in and think, okay, sod it, I'll sign for Audi, I'll sign for Williams. You know, the teams are the bottom half. And then Alpine have come along, of course, on the wing here, and thought, well, maybe Alpine's a proposition. I personally think that Sainz was waiting to see what Adrian Newey would do, because there's always a possibility that Adrian Newey would look at James Vowles and Williams, a very, very non-political team just dedicated to the racing, and think, I should go back home where I made my name, where I won my championship. I want to go and work at Williams. I don't have to up sticks and move to Ferrari and go to Italy and all that sort of stuff. So I think he was waiting to see what Newey would do as much as anything else. So no, it's a long form answer saying no, we're not any closer. But the seat at Sauber next year is probably not. That's not why you're signing. You know, you're signing for 2026 and what that season would have to offer.
Yeah, I mean, if Carlos is following Newey, then well. Rumor has it today that his former car will be a newly designed car within the next couple of years after the news that Enrico Cardela's left Ferrari, going to Aston Martin.
I don't think it's quite confirmed that he's going to Aston Martin yet, is it? But it's like it's all but.
Autosport are strongly suggesting. Mm-hmm. Oh, in fact, no, they're actually saying. And Motorsport Network are good at not getting sued, so...
Lee, when you saw championship-winning technical director signs for Aston Martin, how hard were you?
I mean, I was reasonably aroused, I'm not going to lie.
I tried to word that softer, I'm sorry.
It's just the wrong technical director.
That's the worst Aardman Animations cartoon I've ever seen. Wrong technical director, Gromit.
I still believe. I'm still believing that it's possible that he'll end up designing Fernando Alonso's 2026 championship winning car.
It still is. It still is feasible. I mean, one thing you've got to admire about Lawrence Stroll is he doesn't piss about when he wants things to happen. I mean, he really does back up. You know, he backs up the reputation with the investment and with the drive to win. The expansion of the factory at Aston Martin from what was the Jordan factory, you know, it's gone from being a little hangar to being an entire airport terminal. You know, they basically, he's not here just to, you know, bask in the fact that he has a Formula One team. Like, he's actually here to win, much like Dietrich Mateschitz when he bought Red Bull. Like, initially we sort of looked upon it and thought, are these guys actually serious? Well, it turns out they were. And I think Lawrence is the same way. And I think he'll do everything in his power to get Newey. The question is will Newey look at it and think, wow, I don't know if Lawrence is the sort of guy I want to work for, because he's a bit intense. You know, I think if I'm Newey, I'm thinking to myself, well, there's the politics of Maranello, there's the drive of this sort of oligarch in Lawrence Stroll, or there's James Vowles and a bunch of very smart, quiet engineers down at Grove working for Williams. So what's it to be? So it ultimately, I can't read his mind, but I guess I'm hoping he'll go to Williams, because that, to me, that really is turning the order on its head. Wow, Newey at Williams, that'd be fantastic.
I mean, you've got to think with the Aston Martin, the new headquarters, you know, it's all sparkly and new and high tech, and they're trying to get somebody who designs everything with a pencil. That's not going to fit in, unless Lawrence Stroll's brought in a lot of pencil technicians to actually redefine the pencil to make it better.
Well, I mean, it doesn't fit in at Red Bull either, but it works. So, you know, don't change a winning formula. And I mean, the key prerequisite is that if Lawrence Stroll is not going to intervene on a design and engineering side, you know, it's a bit like the relationship between Bernie Ecclestone and Gordon Murray at Brabham, or Patrick Head and Frank Williams. You know, whoever's running the team needs to stay out of engineering. You concentrate on talking to sponsors and, you know, all that stuff. Don't even think of walking in here, because you don't know what you're talking about. Bernie always understood that remit at Brabham and delegated it entirely to Gordon Murray, and, you know, with incredibly successful results. And the same with Frank and Patrick, and of course Patrick and Adrian at the Williams team. So I think that's probably one of the things that Adrian will look for as a promise. Like, can you revoke Lawrence's access to the engineering department, please? so that I know for certain that we will just be allowed to just get on with it.
Right, what we've got next up? It's actually a bit of a jump, because we had a fair few teams scoring points this week, so it's going to be RB next. Danny 13th and Yuki 10th. The Danny blip seems to have tailed off this week. You know, he was on the rise, and now he's back where probably that car should be, I think.
It was a little bit average, wasn't it? But there's probably a lot of integers behind it that we're not seeing. But he wasn't Sonoda this week. Put it that way.
I don't think anyone can swear that much. even in Australia.
I think the biggest story around RB right now is the swirling rumours concerning Checo Perez, and is there a possibility that one of their drivers might be swapped for Perez? There's certainly a lot of speculation that there's a performance clauses in Perez's contract, and I first heard it. It was reported by Tom Mara, the Irish journalist, about there is a discussion about whether or not to swap Ricciardo and Perez, and I thought, wow, that's back from the dead, because we all thought Ricciardo's chances at Red Bull were gone. And then I heard it was Toby Gruner for Automotor and Sport in Germany, I think, reported it as well. And at that point, anything that Toby Gruner says, you can usually take to the bank as saying, wow, okay, so this is actually seriously on the table. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it is a discussion. And you have to say on the basis of this season that Ricciardo has not advertised himself as being a prime candidate for such a promotion. At the same time, the guy who has beaten him more often than not, Yuki Tsunoda, seems to be under no consideration. And apparently the thing is that Christian Horner thinks that Tsunoda does not have the correct temperament to be put into a team alongside Max Verstappen. So
I can kind of understand that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it must be frustrating to be Yuki Tsunoda and be constantly passed over. You know, it's like, well, there's this talk about, will it be Daniel Ricciardo or would it be Liam Lawson? Of course, there was talk that Liam Lawson might replace Ricciardo at RB. So we're heading into a period here where there might be a sort of merry-go-round going on at Red Bull, and we don't know how it's going to play out. But all those RB players, Lawson, Ricciardo, and Tsunoda, you know, they might be making future plans elsewhere. So it will be interesting to see how it plays out. But back to the Silverstone weekend, yeah, they were completely average. I mean, I think Tsunoda did get a point though. So I mean, it wasn't a dead loss, but they did grab a point. But they weren't really at the races, were they?
Yeah, I mean, Tsunoda was the one to benefit.
My favorite stat.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Just going to say, Tsunoda was the one to benefit from George Russell retiring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. Can you believe that that team's best result at Silverstone is still from the Minardi days? In 1989, Pierluigi Martini was 5th and Luis Perez Sala was 6th. And that was the only time that Minardi had both cars in the top 6 in the Grand Prix when everybody properly started. The only other time was Indianapolis 05, and there were only 6 cars in the race. So that was the only time it ever happened for Minardi. And they've still never matched that as V-Carb, Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, BMW Sauber, or Lotus.
Buy one, get one free.
Yeah.
Right, where next? I think it's probably going to be Williams. Albon 9th and Logan 11th. And no walls were damaged in the making of that 11th place.
Good for him.
Indeed. Yeah, good weekend for all at Williams, I would say. Albon in Q3, Max's best of the year. He was 9th in the Grand Prix. That makes the best result of the season. Logan Sargent 11th. That was his best result of the season and his best qualifying of the year. I mean, you have to say that there is. I mean, I keep dropping this Newey thing in as though like if I say it enough times it'll be true, but it's not. It is not. He's going to this back of the grid tail end team. They are very much in the fight in midfield, but it's so tight between all the cars now. You know, you're talking, 1.5% between all the cars on the grid. That you only need a change in track temperature or wind direction, and suddenly you've got a difference in pace. And this weekend favoured the Williams team, which is, that car traditionally has been very good in a straight line. But Silverstone's not just about going in a straight line. You've got to be able to keep that momentum in these really fast corners, and they proved they could do that. So, good weekend at Williams.
Yeah, I mean, there's rumours flying around. Talking to the Red Bull and RB merry-go-round, there's rumours flying around that Sargent could be imminently replaced with an on-loan Ocon, with Jack Doohan stepping into the Alpine seat to replace him for the rest of the season. Do you think we're going to see as many as 4 teams swapping drivers around this year? Does anyone think that?
No. I believe it when I see it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but where does the Ocon thing come from? What does Ocon get out of that?
He possibly an audition to be Albon's teammate for next year.
Well, I guess so.
And for Alpine,
I think at that stage, if it's not a Newey Williams. At that stage, I might be looking more towards Audi, thinking that's probably a superior long-term project. But Sargent did himself some favours this weekend. He qualified well and he raced well. Just missed the points, but it was a good performance. It might be. I mean, I absolutely don't think he's staying there in 2025. But he's probably earned himself stay of execution, shall we say, in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years appears to be the benchmark for drivers, unless they are particularly terrible. Then it is one and done. But 2 years appears to be. It just all depends on who else is available for the seat, and what positives and money, if necessary, can they bring. I mean, it could be that Ocon comes with sponsorship, which, regardless of how much money teams have got, they always want more.
I think we had a good look at his website a few weeks ago, and there isn't a huge sort of big brand attached to him. I think he just has sort of bits and pieces.
I mean, I can understand the appeal for Williams. He wanted Ocon because you think Ocon and Albon, that's a very experienced lineup that should be. They should play off each other quite well. But you are right. I mean, it's a short shelf life if you're not doing the job in Formula One. And it's not like Logan Sargent is some wanker. The guy took Oscar Piastri down to the last round in F3 to win the title. He won races in F2. He's a world junior karting champion. I mean, the guy has won things all the way up to F1. And then you get to F1 and suddenly you look a bit mediocre and you're out in your arse and that's it. Thanks for coming. Go and drive an IndyCar. Which it downplays just how good Logan Sargent actually is as a driver, because he would absolutely pace, so half of the F2 grid and all of the F3 drivers. But he's been considered not good enough to be in Formula One.
Is there a future for Lance Stroll, Logan Sargent?
Yes, there is a future for Lance Stroll. I can confirm. There is a future.
I've heard rumours.
Yes.
Is there a future for Logan Sargent beyond Williams in F1, or is it nighty night? Enjoy being one of Arrow McLaren's 14 drivers next season at IndyCar.
I don't think there's a future for Logan Sargent in Formula One. I can't see anybody really looking at him and taking him on and thinking, well, he might be advantageous to us. Having said that, I would caveat that by saying I probably said the same thing about Mick Schumacher, and Mercedes took him on, and now he's driving for Alpine and Le Mans and all that sort of stuff. And I have to say I was never particularly sold on Mick Schumacher, even though he was the F2 champion. I mean, the stat that I always regale people with is that he never qualified on the front row in F2. He was not quick enough to get that kind of one-lap pace. So he won the title through attrition and consistency, as opposed to outright speed. And I never saw that turn of speed really in Formula One. But he's still in paid employment. It might be down to the last name. I agree. If it was Logan Schumacher, maybe there would be more of a future than if it was Logan Sargent. But I'm not. I would never criticize the guy for taking advantage of any opportunity. Mercedes might have seen him in the simulator and say, actually, we should take him on. So maybe another team might try him in a simulator and think, well, perhaps, I don't know. Don't see it very likely. I think it's at the moment most likely that Logan Sargent will go to IndyCar. Ironically enough, a championship that he knows little about, because he spent so much of his career in Europe, as did Alex Rossi. Of course, Alex Rossi made it all the way to F1 and then had to go and drive an IndyCar, which I think he did reluctantly, and then he won the Indy 500 and made a pretty good career in IndyCar, because it turns out, if he's good enough to be in F1, you're definitely, you're at that level that you can be competitive in IndyCar as well.
Didn't he win the Indy 500 basically straight away as well?
Pretty much.
By a year or two, wasn't it?
Yeah, he won it at the first attempt in 2016. We were watching it. We were watching it from Monaco. We've just done the Monaco Grand Prix. We went back to the hotel to watch the 500, and we saw him chugging around on the last lap, just trying to get the fuel to last to the end. And sure enough, he chugged across the line, going at half speed. He made it and won the race, and we were all completely gobsmacked. Like, I don't believe it. Those dipsticks only got to won the Indy 500. Amazing. So yeah, that was a good one.
Brilliant.
I mean, don't forget, before Logan goes to before he goes to IndyCar, he has to do what is becoming the ex-Formula One driver's rite of passage. At least one race for Mahindra in Formula E.
Yes. It is actually a viable prospect that he could end up in Formula E. I mean, we've seen ex-F1 drivers end up there, and not necessarily successfully, because Formula E, as maligned as it is by the gammon among us, Formula E actually does require a very specific style of driving, which is not easily mastered. So he could go to Formula E, and if he goes in with an open mind, be very successful, or he could be bloody terrible. We've seen varying degrees of success. Stoffel Vandoorne and Nick de Vries, won the world championship in Formula E, but then we also saw people like Antonio Giovinazzi, who were completely anonymous in Formula E, never got anywhere with it. So that's a different kettle of fish, Formula E. People underestimate how difficult it is.
Yeah, Giovinazzi being anonymous. Maybe we should have given him a Formula E participation
Le Mans,
award.
24-hour Le Mans winner, Antonio Giovinazzi.
I think he's found his series now.
Yeah. Where Dan Ticktum still hasn't.
I have said for years, Dan Ticktum would have been fantastic in Formula One. Why do we not have him in Formula One? If Bernie was here, he would have put him in Formula One because, shithouse respects shithouse. Bernie would have understood. He would have understood Dan Ticktum is the biggest shithouse in racing, and the thing is, he's how Gladiators used to be. When you used to watch Gladiators on British television, well, apologies to those international listeners. There used to be the Wolf Man, right? There used to be the Wolf, and literally everybody would boo him, and he was the bad character. He was like the guy that you hated among the gladiators, and he would always be mean to the contestants and be vindictive. And you tuned in because you wanted to see Wolf meet his comeuppance or have some rumble with somebody. That's what Dan Ticktum is in Formula E. He's the Wolf Man. And if he'd been in Formula One, right? If he'd been in Formula One, he has the skill to be very quick in Formula One, but he also has the mouth and the temperament to be an absolute shithouse to whoever he's dealing with. And it would have been amazing television. I'm telling you, we missed the trick by not putting Dan Ticktum in Formula One. Who's with me on this? Get your comments in. Dan Ticktum should have been a Formula One driver. It would have been so much more entertaining.
I have never agreed with another human being more in my entire life.
So, Lee, you have made similarly passionate pleas on behalf of Dan Ticktum.
I have.
I'm telling you, that's how we start the revolution. We put Dan Ticktum in Formula One, and literally he will become a megastar because people will be like, "Where'd you find this guy? He's very entertaining, not always in the way he intends to be entertaining, but you can't take your eyes off." He's like Nigel Mansell was a shithouse as well. Like Mansell could be the biggest moaning git imaginable, but also brilliant on the racetrack. And I'm telling you, that Ticktum's the same guy.
Well, I've argued before that everybody loves James Hunt until the next one turned up.
Who was the next one?
Let's put you on the spot. Tell you what, we'll talk about Alonso next, just for you then, Lee. Okay. Aston Lance.
Speaking of shithouses, Fernando Alonso.
We've had an election this week, and the most political driver on the grid just happened to have finished 8th.
And he voted reform. The views of Kieren Thompson do not reflect
the views of Fernando Alonso.
Is Kieren Thompson playing the role of Kieren Thompson tonight?
Maybe.
For
tax purposes.
Or Lorraine Kelly.
Yeah. Right, where were we?
Aston Martin.
We were doing a podcast.
Aston Martin. Not the team they were last season.
No.
Nah. But getting better.
Are they?
No, they're certainly not the team they were last year. But I don't think we shouldn't hold it against them. What they did last year was a real jump in performance. They've opened a new factory. They've got a lot of long-term infrastructure going in place at Aston Martin. So it's probably not fair to judge them on this year. They're going to have some bumps in the road. And of course, they're courting Adrian Newey. So, there could be, there's things going on there that are for the long haul. And as I said before, Lawrence Stroll doesn't necessarily engender a lot of love and respect from Formula One fans worldwide, but you've got to respect the man's record and the man's vision and willingness to put the money down. You know, all joking aside, talking about shit-houses, we've seen plenty of those in Formula One history. Lawrence is not one of those. He is definitely in for the long haul and all in financially, and that must be, even though they're not having a great year this year, it must be very exciting to be part of the Aston Martin project right now, knowing what the future holds for them.
Yeah, from the outside, and I'm fairly sure you probably can't comment on this, Sean, but from the outside, he doesn't even seem to be the biggest shithouse that's owned that team.
Yes. Yes. But moving swiftly along from that, not to cast aspersions over anybody who's ever run the team. Are you guys ready for me to name drop?
Yes.
Are you ready for me to name?
Oh yeah.
I'm going to name drop, and there's going to be a casual mention of a location, then a name drop, then a second name drop. So I'm just going to brace you. So I was having lunch on the Larvotto Beach in Monte Carlo the day after the Monaco Grand Prix, and we were holding court. I was speaking to a friend of mine called Paul, and he lives in the building that Lewis Hamilton lives in. So he sees him in the building. So and he also, I believe that Eddie Jordan lives in the same building. And
what a set of neighbours.
Yeah, what an amazing set of neighbours. Nico Rosberg as well. And we were sitting there, and we're literally the usual Monday afternoon funk post Grand Prix, just lounging, having a drink, having a sandwich, just not brain in neutral, you know, just talking random crap. And Eddie Jordan comes along and sits down, and he's got a whole load of guests with him, and Eddie Jordan's holding court at the next table. And you can imagine Eddie doing this, that, and the other. And he gets up and he's on the phone, you know, usual Eddie Jordan stuff. Like about an hour into this, of us sort of lollygagging and just sitting around talking crap, Michael Flatley walked in. The Lord of the Damned interrupted our Monday morning snooze. So then we had a summit meeting. I was getting absolutely paddy-whacked off because I'm of Irish extraction. Paul is Irish. Eddie Jordan's Irish. Michael Flatley is, he's kind of like fake Irish, like I'm fake Irish. It's like, wow, there's a lot of Irish going on here. What an afternoon that was! Surrounded by all this celebrity, and there's me going on about the career of Pier Carlo Ginzani.
I love the idea of Lewis and Nico now living in the same building
with Eddie Jordan.
I mean, certainly used to. I don't know if they still do, but that was once the case.
Your parcel has been left at your neighbour at number. Oh, what?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Nico nips down there in the evening to borrow some milk, because I'm making a cup of tea and I can't be bothered to go down to the supermarket. Have you got any milk?
Moving swiftly on.
Did Eddie Jordan play the spoons?
We do deviate. We do quite deviate from the source material quite a lot on this.
We do.
Whenever I'm on this show, I may be personally responsible for that. I do apologise.
No, trust us, we do it when you're not here as well.
Sean, was Eddie Jordan playing the spoons?
He was not playing the spoons, but he was definitely playing whoever was on the other end of the phone, because he was on the phone a long time that day.
I wonder if that. Well, he's what's his face's manager, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He may or may not have been wheeling and dealing in the world of Adrian Newey. I don't know. I'm certainly. I'm not the sort of person who would try and overhear a private conversation, and even if I was, I would not broadcast the minutes of the meeting on a podcast. So I don't know what he was up to, but even if he wasn't, Eddie's gonna be Eddie. So he's probably wheeling and dealing in some way. You can't you can't keep a good man down when it comes to that stuff.
I mean, he wasn't. I was going to say, did we tell you when we saw Eddie Jordan's band playing over here? Was it 2 years ago at TT?
It was last year.
Was it last?
Oh no, it might have been 2 years ago actually. Yeah, it was 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years ago at TT. A couple of nights before The Darkness played. Eddie Jordan came out from behind the drum kit for a rendition of With or Without You.
Yep.
And he played lead spoons.
Dedicated to Ayrton Senna. Dedicated it to Senna.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the spoon performance.
Oh, no.
Right.
I think it's the best fiver I've ever spent.
We have video proof. You videoed it.
I did.
Was it good?
It held my attention. I don't know whether it was good or not, but it was captivating.
Spoon performances go. It
Yes.
was right up there.
It's one of the best I've seen live.
Yeah. Have you? Well, if you look in the all-time pantheon of rock performances using dinnerware, it's probably right up at the very top.
Oh, absolutely, very much so.
Actually, Eddie's band was on. Okay, stand by for another massive location name drop here. Eddie Jordan's band was playing on one of the yachts that I was appearing on in the Monaco Grand Prix. And we had David Coulthard and Ralph Schumacher and Andy Stevenson from Aston Martin, of course, late of the Jordan team. And there was a brief moment when I might have potentially gone up and played drums with them. And I thought, this is it. I've made my career. I'm going to play drums on a yacht in the harbour of Monte Carlo on Monaco Grand Prix Saturday night. And in the end, and this is a true story, in the end, I could not be asked. I was so tired. I was just like, oh, I'm going back to the hotel. I don't give a crap. I'm so tired. I'm busy because Formula E was in Shanghai the same weekend, and I had to be up during the night doing that. I was absolutely, I was knackered. So I was just like, I can't be bothered.
You do realise, I mean, if he was getting somebody else up to play the drums, that's when they could have been doing With or Without You. You may have missed first-hand being part of the spoon experience.
I might have done. And the thing is being a U2 song, I know how to play it because I know how to play every single U2 song there has ever been. For those of you who know me, have known me a bit long term, I've seen U2 30 times, so I definitely know how to play a U2 game.
I know U2's tour manager. I don't know if he still is U2's tour manager, John Giddens. He runs the Isle of Wight Festival. And every year we say to him,
right?
Why aren't you bringing U2 to the Isle of Wight Festival? And he went, I can't afford them. But you're their tour manager. That's your job.
Yeah.
Where next? Right, Ferrari. Binary Team of the Week award. Apparently Leclerc says he's living in worse than hell.
Ooh.
Feels dramatic.
I've never heard Monaco described like that, but all right.
Yeah, they were using Leclerc for spares, weren't they?
I don't get why Leclerc would ever be the first person you would switch tyres with, because he's not a wet guy, is he? That's not his thing. Like, why he would ever be the first person you think, oh, let's test it out on him? Chaos.
No.
Sorry, you go first.
No,
I'll talk.
No, what I was going to say is no. No.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I guess. Well, you put me on the spot there to think up more, and I'll be honest, I didn't have it. So.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll fill the gap. Yeah, the amount of times I mentioned Otmar Safnauer earlier, and we did an appearance together in Montreal on race morning in Montreal, and we were talking about doing race strategy, and it was raining in Montreal. It started as a wet race, and Otmar said, only half jokingly, said when we're considering what the other teams are doing, we always look at Ferrari and think, oh, they could put dry tires on a wet track. And they did. They did do that day. He said that in the morning, and in the afternoon they actually did that with Leclerc. And they did the same. They did a similar sort of thing in the British Grand Prix. There are honestly times when you just think, if I was a Ferrari fan, I would be better off muting the commentary and just playing the theme from the Benny Hill show in perpetuity. It would make this a better viewing experience than actually trying to work out what it is they're doing. But it is that one of the jokes I do on the stage when I'm doing presentation is that to all you Ferrari fans out there, I hope you've come to terms with your therapy bill, because supporting Ferrari, it can be a very heavy lift sometimes. And certainly the season that Leclerc looked at in Monaco looked like things were back on track. It's all gone to hell ever since then, and they weren't even the fastest Ferrari powered team in the British Grand Prix weekend. So you're not even that. It's amazing, but in mitigation for Ferrari, it is back to what I mentioned earlier. It is so close between all these teams now that you make a minor mistake in setup, in driving, it can it can be several positions on the grid, and once you're in the dirty air, of course, or the DRS train, sometimes you can be stuck there all day.
It's okay, though, for next year, because Ferrari are fixing all their problems by just plugging in a multiple-time world champion, because they've not tried that yet.
No. And a driver over the age of 40. And we know that drivers over the age of 40 win every Grand Prix.
I mean, we do have the sort of running joke about the standard Ferrari pit stop being 2 hards, 1 Bridgestone wet, and a cross-country ski, and then wondering why they've not got fastest lap.
Do you know? There's somebody at Maranello listening to this podcast right now and going, "Huh."
In their defence, they did get fastest lap yesterday.
They did. Once they'd waxed their skis properly, they got fastest lap.
Yeah, I mean, Ferrari never fail to amaze us with ways that they can cock things up completely. Even going back to the days of and I can't take credit for this one either, the Arriva Benny Hill show.
Yes, thank you very much, everybody.
Tip your waitress.
Yeah, thank
Try
you.
the fish.
That's all for this week's edition of 3 Legs, 4 Wheels.
I'm gonna get
built into the DNA of Ferrari, isn't it? You get down to it simply.
Meanwhile, the faster of the Ferrari teams, Haas weren't bad. 12th and another 6th for Hulk.
Great.
That's the best back-to-back results for both Haas and Nico Hülkenberg for 6 years. Not since 2018 has either Hülkenberg or Haas had back-to-back top 6 finishes. And they were the fastest Ferrari-powered team in qualifying, as you mentioned. Hülkenberg, I mean, he gets a lot of stick from everybody for not having had a podium and not having had a win. And he's done 200 and however many races now, and those are both records. But you've got to say, given the car he's being asked to drive, I mean, he drives the nuts off that thing. That's the 6th time he's been in Q3 this year. And he's absolutely annihilated Kevin Magnussen in the same car. You've got to say, I get that he's not been up in the top 3, but you can't ask for more from the guy. That is a really top draw weekend that he's put in again.
Yeah, I mean, you got.
He's done enough to land himself an upcoming works drive in with Audi. It's really good.
Yeah.
It would be amazing if he gets to 38 years old and finally gets on the podium at last. 16 years after his Grand Prix debut, he gets a podium. There you go. Now you're only 199 short of Lewis Hamilton.
I think we've joked on this podcast that if he gets a podium and Audi get it together, he wins the championship that year. He just does it all in 1 year.
Right, and then retires.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking? I think this is a stat which I will say is verifiable, and you probably have this, Sean, without having to do any work whatsoever. Hülkenberg has scored more in the last 2 races than Perez has in the last 6.
Yeah, I believe that's true. Yeah, I admit I haven't double checked it today. I've put everything away and I just don't want to look at it, but I believe that's the case. Yeah, he's done an outstanding job. I mean, they must be so pleased with him. I was on stage yesterday with Gunter Steiner, and we talked about the hiring process for Hulkenberg, and he had mentioned how he had originally wanted him a few years earlier, but he couldn't afford him. And Hulkenberg, he came back to, as Gunter tells the story, so I went back to him a couple of years later when he was out of Formula One and he didn't have any options and he was much cheaper. So that's when we signed him. Which was a fantastic Route 1 football. So yeah, that was a good one. But you've got to say what an investment Nico Hulkenberg is at that team. He's done great things for them, and hats off to him, because they the Haas have been through the doldrums, and even Gunter even said, I'm really pleased for them as well. I know I'm not there anymore. Obviously, I was there when we were sort of planning what we were going to do this year, but I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, these guys screwed me over, blah blah blah. I should be running it. I'm really pleased for them. So that was good.
Just to answer your question, Kieren, Perez has scored 11 points since Miami, and Hulkenberg has scored 16 in the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
Ooh, that will do it.
Hulkenberg as well must surely work out cheaper than Schumacher just on crash damage alone.
Yes, I think that's part of the reason why we signed, is that it was literally, okay, with Magnussen and Hulkenberg, there's a significantly improved percentage possibility that the car will come back in the condition that we sent it out.
And when they sent Mazepin out, there was no guarantees that the car would come back facing the same direction it went out in.
Well, of course, in the Monaco Grand Prix of 2022, the gearbox and the engine parted company on Mick Schumacher's car. So, it didn't all come back... It didn't even all come back with the engine and the gearbox attached. So, make of that what you will.
Right, McLaren next. The team that could have won it, and then... I'm colourblind when for certain shades of reds and orange, and I am sure...
How are you with papaya?
And I am sure that papaya turned into red when it came to pit calls for the second week on the trot.
Oh, God, yeah.
Well... I think maybe McLaren are colourblind when it comes to choosing which tyres to put on Lando Norris's car, because it's yet another example, it seems, of McLaren fumbling what should have been a win. If they had put the remaining set of medium tyres on Norris's car, as Mercedes and Red Bull thought they would, and couldn't understand why they didn't, it could have been a win. Yeah, they might rue that for a while.
Yeah,
but it is
listening to the team radio though. It seems like they gave Lando the choice, and by the time he said go for the mediums, they'd already got the softs ready.
Yeah, I would have thought that was a decision that they would have come to on the pit wall, because it's easy. We are literally being the Monday morning quarterbacks here, so it's easy for us to pick holes in this. Because, Hamilton won the race on soft. So it's like, okay, well, the guy who won the race had the same tires. So it obviously wasn't impossible. But having seen how things played out, they will be kicking themselves that they didn't do that. But on the positive side, they, again, I think, emphasize that they are the fastest team in Formula One right now. Because, if Red Bull... If Verstappen's not in that Red Bull, if Red Bull's pace was to be measured by the slowest driver on the team, they're also Rans. They're not a contender for victory. So McLaren are the fastest two-car team in Formula One at the moment, at least until I see Mercedes do what they did at Silverstone a few more times. And I know that the gap right now is 78 points, I think, between McLaren and Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. McLaren are only third. There's still Ferrari in between them. McLaren have got a chance of winning this Constructors' Championship. They can close that gap. There's still 12 Grand Prix left and 3 sprints. There's a lot of points to win. They can still win this Constructors' Championship. Even if Max wins the Drivers' Championship, they could still win this Constructors' Championship. And that's why, point that we'll get to when we get to Red Bull, there is speculation over whether or not Perez will keep his seat, because McLaren, they can obviously look over their shoulders and see McLaren beginning to close that gap.
Yeah, is the Constructors' Championship as important for Red Bull as it has been for other teams in the past?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
yes.
I think so.
Yes. Next question. Yes.
Right, okay. Anybody else got anything to say about McLaren?
Did they blow the race twice?
Yes, the lack
Piastri
of
have won
double
as well?
stack was shit.
Yes. Yes, I think they let themselves down with poor strategy. They fumbled it big style. And, there's been many times in the last couple of years where, Red Bull, maybe they obviously, Verstappen's had a good pace advantage, but there were many instances, especially in 2022, where Red Bull's strategy won them a race they shouldn't have won. McLaren are the opposite right now. They're losing races they should win. And it's not quite in the comedy, the slapstick way that Ferrari lose races. It's more like, well, guys, you've kind of made an option here that's kind of like, this wasn't a great choice. It's not. They haven't quite got to the point right now where their car is coming into the pits in the middle of a dry race and they put extreme wets on. It's not quite that, but it is a case of like, what? Surely you're overthinking this. I've often said that you've got to be cognizant of the races happening on the racetrack in real life. You can't do the whole race on your laptop. You've got to look up every now and again and say, look, this is clearly the state of play. And I'm sure McLaren, they might not advertise it, but I'm sure they're very, very annoyed with themselves that they're not. They should have had probably 3 or 4 wins by now this season if they just had a few more things go their way.
3 or 4 wins, and Lando would actually be in the championship hunt as well, probably.
Conceivably, yeah, it's conceivable. I mean, he's 84 points off the lead. I mean, Verstappen extended again in the British Grand Prix. It shouldn't be that way. But you got to say, hats off to Red Bull. They're being challenged, and they're still coming away from each race having just steadily increased that lead. They're just coming away with what the weekend will give them and not making a balls of it. I know that Austria happened, but still, Verstappen escaped from that and still got good points. So, yeah, it's McLaren will be licking their wounds, I think, this week.
Do you think? I know we've mentioned this before about teams in the past, but with McLaren have been on this like road back to the front of the grid, since they decided to ditch Honda engines. It's been a long time coming. Do you think all the focus ends up going on fixing getting the right drivers in, fixing the car problems, and then all of a sudden you find yourself with the right drivers and the right car, but you're a team that's kind of forgotten how to win races?
I've never really bought into the notion that if you don't know if you know how to finish first in a race, because it's like, well, look, it's the same as finishing 10th in a race. If you're 11th and you're trying to get into 10th place, the mechanism for doing that is exactly the same as if it's second and first. There's no difference. And all these people, these drivers especially, they've all won races in the junior levels. They're used to being in the lead of something. I don't think that they've necessarily forgotten how to win races. They're just making mistakes. It's not more complicated than that. Ferrari, for instance, make a lot of mistakes, but they've won races. They've won races this season. So it's the sort of thing that they need to cut out. Even Mercedes made occasional mistakes when they were winning 8 consecutive championships. It's something they need to look at. They've certainly got they've got a 2-car lineup there in Norris and Piastri, which should probably have more points than they do. But they're not out of it. They can turn this around. We're only halfway.
Well, talking about a team, going from a team who may or may not forget how to win races to a team who remember how to win races, but one driver's forgetting how to get points.
Oh, is it Red Bull?
It might well be Red Bull. What the hell has happened to Perez?
I mean, this weekend he got sacrificed, didn't he, for tyres?
Yeah, but it wasn't
because he wasn't in a position to be doing anything anyway.
He wasn't there to begin with.
Yeah.
They put him on the strategy to nick back the fastest lap point from Sainz, didn't they? And he didn't, which didn't help.
Mm-hmm. I mean, originally they put him on the Leclerc strategy.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, they paired him on the same lap that they saw Sainz come in the pit lane and went, okay, we're going to pit you as well, Perez. Sainz went out, set fastest lap, Perez went out, and the race ended.
Well, no comment. I don't know. I hadn't realised that because at the end of the race, of course, I'm so preoccupied with doing Lewis Hamilton stuff because I know that's what we're gonna be running with all these stats about Hamilton post race. I'm a little bit preoccupied at that point.
Yeah.
So that sometimes you miss stuff like that. Actually, this is a little bit off topic, but David Coulthard was telling us the other day that he did the post race interviews in Austria. And when he left the commentary box for F1 TV, he went down and Verstappen was leading Norris, and he had to go underneath the tunnel and into the paddock and everything. And he was waiting there in Park from A, and George Russell showed up, and he was like, "What? What's happened? Where's Verstappen and Norris?" So he said, "Yeah, that was a weird experience." Suddenly he's like, "Oh, we've got a completely different result, mate."
You've got to think of new questions. So, George,
exactly.
Why are you here?
Yeah, no, but I sympathise because I know that right at the end of the race, we're so preoccupied with other stuff that we miss little things like that you just mentioned about Checo. That was news to me. I didn't know that had happened. But he is definitely he's definitely suffering from a confidence crisis. And we all know that Checo Perez is better than he's showing us. We all know that. And for whatever reason, he has completely lost touch with that car. Early in the season, he was good. You know, in earlier this season, he was getting regularly on the podium. You know, he was perfectly fine in qualifying. You know, at Suzuka, Perez missed beating Verstappen to pole position by 66 thousandths of a second. Now, that's Suzuka. That's not some like point and squirt racetrack. That's one of the hardest tracks to drive in the world. And Perez it was a front row lockout with Max. So we know Perez can do this, and something has gone seriously wrong there, and I don't know what it is. It's the poison chalice of the second Red Bull has returned. It was a career killer for Pierre Gasly and Alex Albon, and now it's taking its third victim. And you know, while Daniel Ricciardo might look at that seat, or even Liam Lawson, and think, "Oh, give it to me. I could do more than they can." You know, that doesn't necessarily translate. It might be that they get in the car and have just as much of a nightmare as Checo is. I don't know what it is about that car that is so disagreeable for a second driver.
Yeah, because I mean, it's happened a lot. I mean, you go back to the Premax days, and the number 2 Red Bull driver struggled.
They all seem to start well as well when they go in, particularly within the Verstappen area. They all seem to start well, and you think, oh yeah, this is why they've made that switch, and then they seem to fade.
Although Kvyat faded from the beginning, and that's why we've got the Verstappen driver.
Well,
that's not fair. That's not fair. Kvyat was on the podium.
Yeah, he was the torpedo, wasn't he?
Yeah,
and he
was in good shape.
Didn't he beat Ricciardo in the 2015 season?
I think he did. Yes, well remembered. I just forgot about that. But Yes, he did. He checked. He beat him by 3 points. So yeah, Kvyat. Definitely found out why it was called the Piranha Club in Formula One. You know, he lost his drive, lost his girlfriend a lot. You know, could have been.
Both to the same bloke.
Yeah, I know, and we joke, but it's really no laughing matter. You know, when it's a man's career, and then you think like the psychological effect of all of that must have been pretty crushing. But Kvyat was very competitive. He was good in that car. Just unfortunately, he didn't come in with that sort of instant impact that Max Verstappen had. And looking back, you can't say that Red Bull made a mistake by putting Verstappen in that car when they did.
this again slightly off topic here, but I always sensed I don't know, maybe I'm just looking at it from the TV screen. I always sensed that Kvyat was just a very bloody nice guy. Do you have that experience of him, Sean?
I didn't really have that. Like you mean like too nice? Do you mean?
No, just a really nice, down to earth guy. You know.
He seemed perfectly pleasant. There was. I certainly didn't detect any sort of, prima donna attitude or anything like that. It was just, unfortunately, sort of found himself in the right place at the wrong time because they had Verstappen in the on-deck circle and they wanted to rush him into that seat. And I think when Vettel, had a hissy fit with him in China, when Kvyat got on the podium, and then it carried on in the Russian Grand Prix when he ran into the back of Vettel, I think that gave the perfect excuse to say, right, sunshine, you're out. But it might have happened, even if Kvyat hadn't had that happen, it may have happened at the end of that season. They were always going to put Max in that Red Bull in the end. They were just kind of looking, they might have been looking for an excuse. But as I said, you can't look at Max Verstappen's career since then and say that it was a mistake in retrospect. It was just unlucky for Danny Kvyat that he was a very, very good driver at a time when a truly generational talent was waiting in the wings.
Yeah.
So that leaves Mercedes. Just lousy car reliability. Ironically, all that rain and the water system fails.
Mm-hmm.
And then some pensioner goes and does quite well.
Yes, we have now the oldest race winner of the 21st century, indeed, and 15 podium finishes at the same track, 12 podium finishes in a row. It's unbelievable. I mean, Lewis Hamilton has finished on the podium at Silverstone more often than George Russell has finished on the podium everywhere put together.
Wow,
that's unbelievable. And 17 years after his first win, Hamilton wins again, and I have to say it was one of the more emotional wins I've been a part of because I'm very fortunate to go to racetracks, Formula One racetracks, most weeks that they have a Grand Prix, and this one felt special to the fans. I've got to say it was very much like they wanted Norris to win, they wanted Russell to win, they really wanted Lewis to win that one. They wanted the first step of the redemption, and you saw Lewis's reaction at the end. Even he thought it would never happen. And I think the other thing is that we could all see Max fast approaching and thinking it might not happen. It might, Verstappen might pass him down the hangar straight on the last lap and lead 2 corners of this race and win it. And then we'll be subject to what I call the Verstappen groan. The Verstappen groan is what I hear. That's what I hear around the racetrack at the end of Q3 when Russell takes pole, then Leclerc's on pole, and now Hamilton's on pole, and here comes Max Verstappen with his last lap. Oh, Max Verstappen's got pole, and then you hear everybody on all the stands all around the racetrack just collectively go. That's what I call the Verstappen groan, which in a way is actually a massive compliment to Max because he's such a winning machine that people are like, oh, I was just kind of hoping someone would beat him, and they didn't.
But as we said earlier, Hamilton and Mercedes just got everything absolutely spot on. The way they controlled the pace, the way they saved the tyres, the strategy during the race. And I can't remember who it was that said it, but the ideal way to win a Grand Prix is to win it in the slowest time possible.
Prost?
Yes. Juan-Manuel Fangio.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
win it at slowest possible speed.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter at the end of the day how much you win it by. If you're the first car over the line, that is what you're there to do.
Yep.
And
they absolutely did that.
Yeah.
They finally got it all together at once. I actually so Bradley Lord, who you might be familiar with from his appearances on Sky Sports when they go down to the Mercedes garage, He's the communications director he's head of comms for Mercedes. He had to run a personal errand for me in Austria a couple of weekends ago. And I said, Bradley, would you mind doing this for me? I can't get into the place I need to go to do it, but I know you can. And he said, sure, no problem. And this errand had to extend into Silverstone. And he was so it was like 2 weekends in a row. He had to run a personal errand on my behalf. Now, I pointed out to him that every time I get him to do a personal errand, they win the race. And they've been trying to win races for a while. But every time I get Bradley Lord to do an errand for me, Mercedes win the Grand Prix. And he said to me, I am actually a believer in those things. I'm a believer in karma. And I said, oh, great. In that case, I'll bring a load of stuff for you to do in Hungary as well. I'll bring you my ironing, shall I? There you go. You get my shirts done. That'd be great.
So, the always contentious part of this, rock stars and wankers.
Ooh. Obvious wanker, but McLaren strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it possible that we could have someone in both categories simultaneously?
Yeah.
Yeah, we call that...
That is possible.
We call that the Gene Simmons, because he's a rock star who is a wanker.
Right. Well, I was going to say, is it possible motion to install Brian May as the rockstar wanker of the week?
Yes.
I know. God love him. I love Queen. I love Brian May.
Mm-hmm.
But he obviously wasn't comfortable talking on a Formula One grid, which is fine. Martin did say on the air, Brian said, I don't know enough about Formula One. I really don't want to be sort of caught short. I don't know anything about it. And full respect to Brian May. Of course, he's Professor Brian May of astronomy. Mm-hmm. He's a properly learned gentleman. But he is also a rock star. So, he qualifies in both categories.
Now, funnily enough, both Partridge and Brian have actually made comment on this. Partridge basically said exactly the same as you, a natural rock star and a wanker for not talking to Martin. But Brian said, I cannot abide by any comparison of Gene Simmons and Brian May. And I know for a fact that Brian isn't a Kiss fan, so I know which way.
It's not that Brian, though.
No, not that Brian.
In the nicest possible way. Go on, Sean. You're going to say the exact same.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say I'm only. Brian May is just a temporary visitor to the wanker column this week. Just a temporary one, just for the purpose of this item. We're going to put him in the wanker column, and then we're going to immediately remove him from the wanker column because we like Brian May and we like Queen.
From the grid walk, I would also put into the wanker. Yeah, I'll put him into a wanker column. Whoever was the PA representative for the newly installed secretary of, I don't know what it was.
That was fucking excruciating.
Party I voted for, but it was painful to watch.
I think you'd gone to the loo at this point.
Yeah, I think I missed some of the grid walk.
Yeah.
I was desperate to see if Brundle actually managed to, 1, recognise, and 2, speak to Patrick Mahomes.
No on both counts.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an awkward moment, wasn't it? That the Labour minister, who was it seemed like he was being sort of pushed into Martin Brundle's way by that PR representative, which with the best will in the world, Brundle didn't really seem that bothered in talking to him. It was nice to meet you. Yeah.
We've got
that was.
We've got Perez in the wanker column as well. He's had a few votes just for
general shitness.
Yeah, just for not being there at any point when he was meant
I feel
to
bad. I feel bad beating up on a driver who's clearly in a confidence crisis right now. Yeah, I feel like our rock stars and wankers should be non-F1 drivers. It should be other people related to what. Actually, I've just thought I've got a fantastic entrant to the rock star category, and that is the AV team at Silverstone, who I work with, Ant and Rob, not to be confused with Ant and Deck, it's a completely different thing. Ant and Rob, on the Friday when it absolutely lashed down with rain, we had a big video wall in our hospitality area on the veranda. So it was outside. We had this outdoor video screen. You can see everything that's going on. It's fantastic. On Friday, it rains, pisses down, and it shorts out. The whole screen shorts out. It doesn't work. Ant and Rob had to sit there on Saturday and build another video screen to get it to go. And they did it, and everybody got to watch the Grand Prix on the veranda with this big screen so they could hear Crofty and, see the race and everything. So a big, big rock star vote for Ant and Rob, the AB team at Silverstone.
I'll tell you what, next year, get us tickets into hospitality and we will give them the Rockstar Award personally.
All right. I like that. That was smooth when you did that.
Can I give one? I think I mentioned this. I'm pretty sure I did mention this on last week's show. One Rockstar Award for my old housemate Adam Johnson, not that one. Who unfortunate. He started his first week at work this week as medical services manager at Silverstone, and he had to turn up on his third day at work and camp at Silverstone in the pouring rain for 5 days. Had about 45 minutes sleep, but from the messages he was sending me throughout the weekend, it sounds like he had a great time and he did his job thoroughly well, including, and I don't want to name drop too hard here, but he gave a lift to Joshua Dirksen.
Oh, there we go. Tell you what, who needs Michael Flatley when you've got name drops like that?
Didn't you also say he had to deal with a very pissed off Sophia Flörsch?
He did also have to deal with he had to treat a very pissed off Sophia Flörsch, who I think has done something to her hand, so I hear, but unconfirmed. Yeah, that was me towing the line of what can I say on air. Yeah. So I don't think he had much involvement in the race because nobody did anything. But he was down at Wellington for the whole weekend, basically managing the whole medical situation on site. And for your first week at work, for that to be your job, I have max respect for him. And he is a listener. Amen. So
yes, amen to that. That's definitely a rock star. Definitely worthy of consideration. I nearly tipped this off to you before we went on the air. This is not related to the British Grand Prix, but the Spanish Grand Prix. I met this girl. There was a guest at the Spanish Grand Prix called Livy, and we got talking, and we ended up sort of exchanging our Instagram handles because said, do you have an Instagram? Yeah, blah blah blah. And I looked at her Instagram handle, and I noticed there were pictures of a 1960s rock star on it, and I thought that's interesting. Like the guy looks familiar. Where have I seen that guy? And through a process of elimination, I worked out that this woman that I had met was the daughter of Dave Dee, Dozy, Beaky, Mick and Titch, the 1960s rock band, right? So I want to say, I know it's not the British Grand Prix because it was from the Spanish Grand Prix, but I want an honorary induction of Dave Dee from Dave Dee, Dozy, Beaky, Mick and Titch into this week's Rockstar column because he was actually a rock star.
I think we can definitely go with that.
We played them too much on the radio.
It's too much. Yeah, we don't. It's too much. There's a little bit saturation. We should probably play less Dave Dee, more Taylor Swift. But yes, I know all your listeners. I know all your listeners know every word of the lyrics to "Legend of Xanadu." So it's one for the kids, there, folks. It's one for the kids.
Do you know what?
On Vectis, we play Dave Dee way too much. Because the second song of every hour on the radio station is a track from the 60s. And we've got all the Beatles, we've got a bit of Tom Jones, and we have a lot of Dave Dee, Dozy, Grumpy, Sneezy, I can't remember their names now, Mick and Titch.
VCarb Cash App.
Yes.
I've just got to jump in here and say, actually, at one point about 30 years ago, I think I did know all the words to The Legend of Xanadu, because I used to play pool for a pub team back in Halifax, and the jukebox in the pub broke down, and for 6 weeks they just had this 60s mixtape on repeat constantly, and one of the tracks was The Legend of Xanadu. And if I hear that bloody whip crack again,
fantastic. Now, all your listeners now, everybody under the age of 40 is going to go scurrying. Like, what's he on about? There's a whip crack in this song. I want to hear it now.
So while we're on the subject of obscure trivia, we have been sent what has been called a tough shunt, especially for Sean. Although anybody else can join in if they have any thoughts.
We'll have thoughts, they just won't be the right thoughts.
Fair point.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I want to thank Baz for sending this in. Fellow podcaster, does an American part of the team that does an American football podcast called the Gridiron Gentleman. Well worth a listen. And instead of bold predictions, they have the I say predictions because they are gentlemen.
Okay.
Right. So, I was born.
Yay.
In 1956.
Oh, Christ, we've got to do maths now, haven't we?
Look at 68.
68 this year, yeah.
I won my first ever race in 1973 in a Simca rally.
Oh, been 16.
That's quite young for a rally, it feels. Or certainly for that time.
And question 3, I won my first national touring car championship at 16.
I've just got a car vibe from this rather than a person vibe.
Is it Michel Mouton?
Is that your first guess?
Yeah.
Right. We will continue. I'm not saying if it's right or wrong till the end because we did change the rules.
I think yeah, it was about the right age for Michel Mouton.
It's definitely not Lightning McQueen this week.
Question 4. Clue 4. I made the switch to single-seaters in 1976 and grabbed pole in my first race.
Okay, it's not Michel Mouton.
When was Bambarilla? That would have been earlier.
Clue 5. I won the 1978 F3 European Championship.
Should know this, shouldn't I?
Well, Baz is hoping that you don't.
Yeah, sure. 1978.
Yeah.
Is this a guess or is this the one before the guess?
This is the one before a guess. You've still got one more clue before the next guess.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Right, no, you've got
to keep count.
You've got another one here. No, clue 6. I spent my time in F1 in uncompetitive machinery, failing to score a single point.
I'm still getting a brand vibe.
Well, there was a film some years ago
Cars.
about. Yes, that's it. It's Lightning McQueen. No, there was what's the name of the guy who ended up in a kidnap, guns, drugs, something or other?
That's about
and he
50
was very
films.
down to earth. I want to say his name was James something, and it's not James Hunt.
Bond.
James
Oh
Bond.
no, it's definitely not. No, I'm thinking of. No, ignore me. I'm thinking of Tommy Byrne. It's not Tommy Byrne.
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah.
So your second guess is not Tommy Byrne.
Hey, this is more for Sean's purpose. I'm merely a spectator throwing out crap.
Yeah, it's is it I don't know, Patrick Gaillard?
Okay, is that your second guess?
Yeah, may as well be.
Right. Okay. we will continue. Clue 7. I drove for 5 different F1 teams, and I'm not going to name them because it'd make it obvious.
Yes,
but didn't
sure
score a point.
It's not a car part.
Do we have to guess now? Do we?
No. You got another few clues before the next guess.
Okay.
Clue 8. I'm mostly known for my sports car career, which includes winning Le Mans once.
It's not Nico Hulkenberg.
And clue number 9. In 1999, I started my own racing team, which operated in 4 different series.
And
I'll need a guess after this one, and then we have the Spaffer.
Right. Well, we know it's not Pierre Carlo Gonzalez.
How old's Adrian, or how old was, I can't remember if he's still alive now, this is awful, Adrian Campos?
I don't think he is alive.
He is no longer alive. Campos didn't make his F1 debut until '87, and he only raced for Minardi, so it wouldn't be him. Okay. I guess I should be a little bit more industrious with my guessing here, but I really can't be bothered because it's my day off. My brain matter does not want to exercise. It irritated me because the 1978 European F3 Championship, that should be a dead giveaway, and I can't remember who won the championship that year. So, let's see, 56. Yeah, it's not coming to me, must admit.
All right, we have the Spaffer clue. I made a shock return to F1 10 years after my last race, which is a record.
Okay, yeah, no, instantly who it is, and it's actually somebody I was going to guess, but I thought we were looking for a French driver because you mentioned the Simca series, which is what threw me off. Now instantly I realise who it is, and yep, okay, got it.
Is it the Dutch man I'm thinking of?
He is the.
I'm not going to say it.
He is the sporting director of the Dutch Grand Prix.
I can't remember his name.
No, I'm irritated. I didn't just shout it out. Now. I was so fixated on being a French person, because of what you said in the early clues. That's why I said Mouton and I said Patrick Gaillard, and threw me off the scent.
And the answer is Sean.
Jan Lammers.
Yes. I would say half a point there to Baz for getting as far as the Spaffer. One other fact about Jan Lammers, he does sim racing, and I beat him a few weeks ago.
Is that a fun fact? It's a fun fact for you.
That's why he's retired from racing, I guess.
Yeah, it's a fun fact for me.
He's going round with his mates going, got beat by Paul Nicholson the other week.
I'm not even Paul Nicholson on iRacing. I'm Paul Nicholson 2. Somebody got to my name before I did.
Is it the darts guy?
It better bloody not be. Oh, I can't say that. He listens to this.
Not even quick enough to get his own name.
From here onwards, every time you see Jan Lammers, you should do what I do every time I see or talk about Jeff Gordon. Because I beat Jeff Gordon in his own charity karting event once. And we'll paper over the fact that I started from pole position and he started 24th, had to pass every other car, and basically ran out of laps. He was one lap away from passing me and didn't. But I always think, see, Jeff Gordon, he was an amazingly quick driver. Quite as quick as me. Just not quite. But almost as quick as I was. And, if I'd been in the car, I just would have done that tiny bit better. So you can do that now with Jan Lammers in perpetuity.
I'm hoping I can do it better because next week we've got Josh Thompson from Team Redline on the show. I'll be interviewing him this week, and he's giving me a coaching session tomorrow night. So I may get quicker in not real racing.
Right.
There's hope for me, yeah. If over 40s can get close to Grand Prix wins, I can claim I'm over 40. Very over 40, but I'm still saying over 40. I think that's probably about everything for tonight. Sean, thank you so much for coming on and letting us ruin your day off.
You bastards. Pleasure as always.
It's always great to have you on, and we'll definitely not leave it so long this time, and come back at the end of the season. We'll do the season wrap up.
If I'm invited, I'll definitely come back.
The invitation is always open. If you want to get in touch, then obviously we've got the website 3legs4wheels.com, at 3legs4wheels on all the socials, 3legs4wheels@gmail.com on the email, and individually we are all on Twitter or X or whatever.
At Sean Cowper.
at Kieren is boring.
At the Lee Stevens.
I'm at Pablo100. Flood is coming back soon. I keep saying that. At Flood21. And Sean, your socials handle?
VirtualStatman.
So get in touch. If you want to support the show, then you can donate through Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/3legs4wheels. And don't forget the special offer on Magic Mind. Just use the code that we'll put on the website. Right, we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.